and welcome. Welcome back, or perhaps welcome for the first time. As the day draws to a close and the evening deepens, the world outside begins to soften, to quieten. It's a time for rest, for letting go, for finding comfort in your own space. So please, find your most comfortable spot. Settle in deeply. Let the weight of your day gently lift from your shoulders. Allow your muscles to relax, unfurl, loosen. Dim the lights low. Create a peaceful atmosphere around you. Perhaps you have a favorite blanket, a comfortable pillow. Allow yourself to sink into its softness. Here on Boring History for Sleep, we approach history a little differently. We don't focus on the battle, the revolution, the moments of high drama. Instead, we seek out the quiet corners, the often overlooked details, the sensory experiences of the past. We explore the mundane, the textures, the sounds, the smells, the rhythms of daily or nightly life in times long gone. It's history designed not to keep you on the edge of your seat, but to gently engage your mind just enough to distract from the thoughts of your own day, while allowing the rest of you, your body, your deeper consciousness, to simply relax and drift. We invite you to imagine yourself there, in those moments, experiencing history not just as facts on a page, but as a palpable reality designed to be. Peacefully informative and ultimately conducive to sleep. Tonight, our quiet exploration takes us into the very heart of the Middle Ages, a place that features prominently in our stories and our imaginations, the medieval castle. We often picture castles as symbols of strength, of knights and kings, of grand halls filled with feasting and music. There's a romance attached to the idea of these stone fortresses standing against time. But what was it truly like to spend a night inside those formidable walls beyond the feasts and the battles? What were the simple physical realities, the feel of the stone, the quality of the light, or the lack of it, the sounds that echoed or were muffled by the thick walls, the smells that permeated the air, the sheer challenge of staying warm or finding true comfort? Tonight, we will spend some time imagining ourselves within the castle as the sun dips below the horizon and the long hours of darkness begin. We will explore the textures of the stone, the limited reach of candlelight and firelight, the particular sounds of a castle at night, the smells that were a constant presence, the feeling of seeking warmth and sleep in a world that was built more for defense than for comfort. What might you hear from your simple bed? What would you smell? What kind of darkness would surround you? We will try to capture the tangible reality, the physical presence of a night within those echoing stone walls, understanding that the romantic image is often quite different from the lived experience. And from the enduring stone of the castle, our journey through historical nights will continue. We won't stay in one place, but will travel to other distinct settings, experiencing the unique conditions of night or confinement in different times and places. We will travel east, joining a caravan moving under the vast star-filled night sky of the ancient Silk Road, feeling the scale of the open landscape and the sounds of a camp settling down. We will then seek the quiet dedication within the stone walls of a medieval monastery scriptorium, spending hours in the flickering focused light, surrounded by parchment and ink. And finally, we will descend into the hidden, dark, and profoundly uncomfortable world of the Victorian London sewers, exploring a reality usually kept far from sight and smell. Each location offers a unique sensory landscape, a different set of challenges and experiences that contrast sharply with the comforts of your own modern night. So, take another slow, gentle breath, feel the support beneath you, release any last bit of tension, and prepare to leave behind your modern world for a while and experience the tangible realities of history, one quiet sensory detail at a time, designed to lull you into a peaceful rest. Let the doors of the castle close behind us now, and welcome the medieval night we arrive. At the castle gates, not in the bright light of day, but as the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. The castle stands before us, a formidable silhouette of stone, powerful, enduring. For centuries, these structures were the heart of defense, symbols of authority, and places of relative safety in a turbulent world. They were built to withstand sieges and to project power, to endure the ravages of time and conflict. But what was life truly like within those walls when the primary purpose shifted from daytime activity and defense to simply passing the long hours of night beyond the romanticized images, the tournaments and the feasts, lies a more tangible reality, a reality defined by stone, by darkness, by the absence of modern comfort, and by a unique collection of sounds and smells that belonged entirely to the medieval night within a castle. Let us step across the drawbridge before it is raised, pass beneath the heavy portcullis, and enter this world as dusk turns to darkness. We will explore what it felt like to be inside, from the moment the gates closed until the first light of dawn. As dusk turns to darkness, preparing for the night, feel the coolness of the air as the sunlight fades. Even if the day was warm, the thick stone walls of the castle retain the chill, and as the ambient temperature drops that stored cold begins to radiate outwards. The courtyard or bailey, which might have been bustling with activity during the day, blacksmiths, working servants, moving soldiers training, begins to quieten. Shadows lengthen, stretching across the stone flags and the wooden buildings within the walls. The most significant sound of this time is the closing of the main gates. Heavy, made of thick wood, reinforced with iron, they are swung inward with considerable effort. Hear the deep groan of the massive hinge, the scrape of wood against stone, the final heavy thud as they meet in the center. Then the sound of heavy wooden bars being slid into place, and perhaps the metallic clang of a chain or bolt. It's a sound of finality, of sealing off the castle from the outside world. A physical barrier that reinforces the sense of being contained within the stone walls. If the castle has a portcullis, a heavy grated barrier of wood or iron, hear the creak and groan as it is slowly lowered into place. The scrape of metal or wood in stone channels the final heavy thud as it reaches the ground. These sounds are signals, markers, that the castle is closing down for the night, hunkering down, preparing for the hours of darkness. Inside the great hall or in the private chambers of the lord and his family, the preparations for the evening and night are also underway. The most vital task is starting or replenishing the fires in the large stone hearths. Hear the crackle and pop of dry wood catching flame. See the flicker of the firelight beginning to dance on the stone walls, chasing the growing shadows back into the corners. Smell the first scent of wood smoke, perhaps oak or pine or whatever wood is available, filling the air, a smell that will become pervasive throughout the castle as the night goes on. In key areas, along important corridors near stairwells in private chambers, candles are lit. Hear the scrape of a flint or the striking of steel on tinder. See the tiny tentative flame catch hold of a wick. Smell the faint sweet scent of beeswax if they are using good quality candles, an expensive luxury likely only in the Lord's area, or the heavier, greasier smell of burning animal fat from cheaper tallow candles. These lights are small, casting only limited pools of weak, flickering illumination. Torches, bundles of wood or tow, soaked in pitch or resin, might be lit and placed in sconces on the walls, particularly in larger halls or along battlements. Hear the roar of the flame as it catches, see the bright, smoky light it provides, smell the strong, distinctive odor of burning pitch. Torches offer more light than candles, but they consume fuel quickly and fill the air with smoke and soot. Elsewhere, night guards are being assigned their posts. Hear the low voices of men receiving instructions. The quiet shuffle of feet as they move into position, some on the battlements overlooking the land, others within the castle, patrolling courtyards and corridors. They settle in for a long, cold watch, becoming part of the castle's nighttime soundscape. As the last light of day disappears completely, the sounds of daytime activity cease. The clatter from the kitchens dies down. The noise from workshops fades. What's left is a different set of sounds. Sounds belonging to the night, and to the stone structure itself, as it settles in for the hours of darkness. The air grows cooler. The smells of smoke and damp stone become more prominent, and the vast majority of the castle is left to the encroaching and absolute darkness. The presence of the stone, cold and damp. The defining characteristic of a medieval castle is its material, stone. Massive, thick walls of stone, stone floors, stone staircases. These were built for strength, for defense to last. And they did. But living within them, especially at night, meant living in a world dominated by the physical properties of that stone. Stone is an excellent insulator against heat transfer, which is great for keeping out hot sun, but it also means it holds onto cold incredibly well. Throughout the day, the stone walls and floors absorb what little warmth there is from fires or weak sunlight. But as the fires die down or are confined to certain areas and the external temperature drops at night, the stone radiates that absorbed cold outwards. The very walls around you feel intensely cold, to the touch a deep, penetrating chill. Imagine touching a stone wall or floor with your bare hand or foot. The immediate, shocking coldness. This coldness isn't just on the surface, it seems to come from within the stone itself, a deep inherent coldness that permeates the entire structure. This makes the air inside the castle feel perpetually cool or downright cold, especially during the colder months. Adding to the cold is the dampness. Stone structures, especially old ones, are prone to damp. Water can seep into the walls, rise from the ground, or enter through the roof or open windows. This dampness makes the air heavy and clammy. It settles on surfaces, making them feel slick or cold to the touch. The smell of damp stone and mildew is a constant companion. This dampness makes the cold feel even more biting. The air seems to suck warmth directly out of your body. Even with large fires roaring in the great hall, their warmth only extends a limited distance. Move away from the immediate vicinity of the hearth, down a corridor, up a staircase into a chamber without a fire, and the cold quickly asserts itself. The heat from the fire dissipates rapidly in the large open stone spaces absorbed by the massive walls and floors. The stone remains cold, a constant presence, an unyielding source of chill. Drafts are also a significant problem. Castles were not airtight. Arrow slits in the walls designed for defense allow wind to whistle through. Windows, even those with wooden shutters or simple cloth coverings, are far from sealed. Gaps around doors, openings in the roof, or battlements all allow cold air to find its way in creating constant drafts that snake through corridors and across rooms, adding to the feeling of being exposed to the elements even indoors. Imagine trying to get truly warm in this environment. Your body heat is constantly being leached away by the cold stone surrounding you and by the drafts of cold air. Even under blankets, the air feels cold on your face, and the chilling presence of the stone walls and floor is always there. The physical reality of living within these thick, cold, damp stone walls is one of perpetual chill, a deep penetrating cold that is incredibly difficult to escape, making simply being comfortable a significant challenge. The reign of darkness, limited light and deep shadows. As we settle into the castle, night, one of the most profound differences from modern life, becomes overwhelmingly apparent: the dominance of darkness. Forget the pervasive glow of city lights, the ability to flip a switch and instantly illuminate an entire room. In a medieval castle, at night, light is a scarce, precious, and limited resource. The primary source of illumination, as we've mentioned, is fire. The large fires in the hearths provide warmth and a significant amount of light, but only in the immediate vicinity of the hearth. Step away from the fire and the light diminishes rapidly, its reach limited. The flames flicker and dance, casting dramatic, unstable shadows that leap and shift on the stone walls, creating shapes that can play tricks on the eye and make familiar spaces seem strange and potentially unsettling. Beyond the fires, the main sources of portable or localized light are candles and torches. Candles provide only small, weak pools of light. A single candle might barely illuminate the surface of a small table. Multiple candles are needed to provide enough light to move around safely in a small room. They burn down relatively quickly, especially cheaper ones, and their light is yellowish and flickering, making tasks like reading or writing difficult and straining on the eyes. Torches provide more light, but they are smoky. They drip burning pitch or resin, and they need to be carried or placed in wall sconces where they blacken the stone with soot. They are also a significant fire risk due to their open flame and dripping fuel. The consequence of these limited light sources is that the vast majority of the castle is plunged into near absolute darkness once the sun has set. Only the Great Hall key guard posts and perhaps the Lord's private chamber will have consistent, albeit flickering, light. Corridors, stairwells, storerooms, many smaller chambers, even much of the area within larger rooms but away from the light source, all are consumed by deep, impenetrable darkness. Imagine moving through this environment without carrying a candle or a torch. You would be completely blind, unable to see the uneven floor, the steps, the obstacles. Even with a light source, the darkness is pushed back only a short distance. The light seems to create as many problems as it solves, casting long, deep shadows that conceal corners, doorways, and anything beyond the immediate pool of illumination. Shadows become dominant vast areas of unknown that surround the small islands of light. This pervasive darkness is not just an absence of light. It changes the feel of the space. Distances become harder to judge. Familiar shapes become distorted by shadows. The castle, so solid and visible by day, becomes a place of mystery and hidden corners at night. The sounds of the night seem louder, more immediate, because your sense of sight is so severely limited. Adding to the challenges, the open flames of candles, torches, and fires pose a constant, serious fire risk. In a building with wooden roofs, floors and internal structures, and filled with flammable materials like straw bedding, tapestries, and fuel, a single dropped candle or a spark from the hearth could quickly ignite a catastrophic fire, particularly dangerous in the dark with limited ways to escape or fight the blaze. Living with this level of darkness, relying on such limited, inefficient, and dangerous light sources is a profound departure from the modern world of ubiquitous electric light. It makes simple tasks, difficult movement perilous, and adds a layer of constant visual limitation to the medieval night. The sounds of the medieval night. In the deep darkness and cold of the castle night, with sight so limited, your other senses become heightened, and the sounds that fill the air, or the relative silence, tell the story of the castle as a living, breathing, working entity, even after most of its inhabitants have gone to sleep. First, there is the wind. The castle's exposed position, its towers and battlements, and its many unsealed openings mean that the wind is a constant presence, and its sound becomes a significant part of the castle's nighttime acoustics. Hear it whistling through arrow slits, its voice changing pitch depending on their size and the wind's strength. Hear it moaning or sighing as it flows around the towers and through gaps in the parapet. Hear it rattling loose shutters or whipping at any remaining banners or flags. The sound of the wind can seem lonely, eerie, or even mournful as it moves through the ancient stone structure. The stone structure itself also contributes to the sounds of the night. As the massive stone walls and floors cool down after sunset, they can expand or contract slightly, creating subtle groans, creaks, or cracking sounds. These are the sounds of the building settling, shifting, responding to temperature changes. In the quiet of the night, these sounds can seem amplified, mysterious sometimes, sounding almost like footsteps or movement within the walls themselves. The guards on duty become part of the rhythmic soundscape. Hear the regular measured cadence of their footsteps as they patrol the battlements, the courtyards, and the corridors. On stone floors, the footsteps echo their sound, carrying some distance before fading back into the silence. If they wear any light armor or equipment, hear the faint jingle or clink of metal. You might hear their low voices talking quietly to each other, or the occasional cough, the shifting of their weight as they stand watch. These sounds are a comforting reminder that the castle's defenses are active, but also a constant background presence throughout the night. Animals within or near the castle contribute their sounds. Hear the muffled movements and soft nickering of horses in the stables, perhaps located on a lower level or in the bailey. Hear the occasional whine or growl of guard dogs alerted by a distant sound outside the walls, or perhaps just dreaming. From the battlements or nearby trees you might hear the distinctive hooting of owls. And from within the walls and floors the quiet, persistent scratching, gnawing and scurrying sounds of rats and mice, the ever-present vermin, a constant, unsettling background noise that is more noticeable in the quiet of night. From the areas where people are sleeping, hear the sounds of rest or attempted rest, the rhythmic soaring of snoring from a crowded sleeping area, the rustle of straw or fabric as someone shifts in their sleep, a cough, a sigh, a muttered word. These are the human sounds muffled by distance and walls but still present. In large halls or open spaces, sounds can echo and reverberate in surprising ways, making it difficult to pinpoint the source of a noise. A dropped object, a sharp cough, a distant door closing, these sounds can bounce off the stone walls, creating confusing echoes that make the space feel vast and sometimes disorienting in the dark. And then, there are the sounds that might be difficult to explain. The settling of the building, the wind, animals, or is it something else? In the deep darkness, imagination can be powerful, and unexplained creaks or distant scraping sounds can take on a more unsettling quality. The thick stone walls of the castle, while letting in wind, do a good job of muffling sounds from outside. The sounds of the surrounding countryside or any activity happening beyond the immediate vicinity of the castle are often greatly reduced, creating a sense of being sealed off, highlighting the internal sounds of the castle itself. The soundscape of a medieval castle night is a unique blend of natural elements, the sounds of the structure itself, the presence of animals, the sounds of human inhabitants, and the ever-present potential for mystery in the dark. It is rarely completely silent, but the sounds that are present are distinct from the noises of the daytime world, the lingering sense of the night. Just as the sounds of the castle night are distinct, so too are the smells. As the air cools and becomes more still, the various odors that accumulate throughout the day and are produced in the evening become more noticeable, creating a unique olfactory profile for the medieval castle. One of the most dominant smells is smoke. From the large fires burning in the hearths, the smell of wood smoke permeates the air. It clings to the stone walls, to the tapestries, to clothing, to hair. It is a smell of warmth and safety, but also a pervasive, slightly acrid odor that is always present in the areas where fires are lit and lingers throughout the rest of the castle. Adding to the smoky air is the smell of the lighting. Burning beeswax candles have a relatively clean, slightly sweet honey-like scent, but these were expensive and not widely used. Cheaper tallow candles made from animal fat produce a much stronger, greasy and often unpleasant smell as they burn, adding a layer of rancid odor to the air. Torches burning pitch or resin have a sharp, tarry medicinal smell that is quite pungent. The stone structure itself contributes a smell, the earthy, musty odor of damp stone. This smell is often more noticeable at night, when the air cools and dampness condenses. It's the smell of ancient rock and moisture, a constant reminder of the physical nature of the building. The presence of animals is another significant source of smell. Stables where horses are kept produce the strong, unmistakable odor of manure, hay, and horse. If livestock are kept within the bailey, their smells also contribute to the castle's overall aroma. These smells can drift into living areas depending on the wind and the layout of the castle. The human inhabitants also contribute to the castle's olfactory environment. With bathing being a rare event for most people, the smell of unwashed bodies and stale clothing can be noticeable, particularly in crowded sleeping areas or smaller chambers. This is simply a reality of pre-modern life with limited access to water and soap. Lingering smells of cooking from the kitchens, the smell of roasted meat, boiling vegetables, baking bread, can still be present, particularly in the areas near the kitchens, though these might fade somewhat as the night progresses. And the specific strong and deeply unpleasant smell from the guardrobes, the castle's latrines, rises up from the pits or the waste chute, a pungent odor that is often carried by the wind and can affect nearby areas, adding a distinct and undesirable scent to the castle air. These various smells mix and layer throughout the castle, creating a complex and ever-present combination of wood smoke, damp stone, animal presence, human odor, and lingering food and waste smells. It is a different world of scent than we are used to, one that is often stronger, less pleasant, and more persistent than the controlled environments of today, seeking rest. The sleeping quarters. After the evening activities, the long hours of the medieval night are meant for rest. But finding true comfort and sleep in a medieval castle is not the straightforward process it is today. Your sleeping arrangements would depend entirely on your status within the castle. The lord and his immediate family might have a private chamber, possibly with a wooden framed bed, a mattress stuffed with flock tufts of wool or feathers, a great luxury, and several layers of blankets or furs. Their bed might even have curtains around it, providing a small degree of privacy and helping to trap body heat in the cold room. For most other inhabitants, soldiers, servants, lesser officials, sleeping quarters would be far more basic. You might sleep on a mattress stuffed with straw or rags laid directly on the stone or wooden floor, perhaps in a communal room, a guardhouse, or even the Great Hall after the evening activities have finished. Straw mattresses are hard, lumpy, and can be prickly. They also attract and harbor insects. Bedding typically consists of rough woolen blankets. These are heavy, and while they offer some warmth, they can also be itchy against the skin. In the pervasive cold of the stone castle, especially away from a fire, 1 or 2 woolen blankets are often not enough to keep you truly warm. The cold seems to rise from the floor and the walls, penetrating the bedding. You might wake up feeling chilled, your breath misting in the cold air of the room. A significant discomfort in medieval bedding is the presence of parasites. Fleas, lice, and bedbugs are common inhabitants of straw wool and human clothing. Imagine trying to fall asleep while constantly itching, knowing that tiny creatures are crawling on you and in your bedding. This is simply a reality of life with limited effective sanitation and pest control. Mice and rats, as we mentioned, are also common. You might hear them scratching in the walls or floors, or even scurrying across the room. The knowledge that these rodents are present adds another layer of unease to the environment where you are trying to rest. Privacy for most is minimal or non-existent. Sleeping in communal rooms means you are surrounded by the sounds, snoring, coughing movement, and smells of others. Even with curtains around a higher status bed, you are likely in a room shared with attendants or family members, so your sleeping experience is one of potential cold hardness, itchiness, the presence of vermin, and a lack of true privacy. It is functional rest certainly, but far from the clean, comfortable and private sleep you expect today. Activities of the night watch and moving in the dark. While most inhabitants of the castle are attempting to sleep, life continues in certain areas, particularly for those assigned to the night watch. Guard duty throughout the long hours of darkness is a test of endurance. Soldiers patrol the battlements, the courtyards, and the important internal areas. Their job is crucial to remain vigilant, to watch for any sign of intrusion or trouble to keep the castle secure. Imagine the experience of being a guard. The long, cold hours of standing or slowly walking. The biting cold, especially on the exposed battlements with the wind whistling around you. The deep darkness outside the walls, making it difficult to see anything beyond a short distance, straining your eyes. The monotony of the patrol route, repeated hour after hour. Battling fatigue, fighting the urge to sleep, knowing that a lapse in concentration could have serious consequences for the safety of everyone inside the castle. Hear their footsteps slow and regular, the only sound in certain quiet corners of the castle. Feel the cold that they must endure for hours on end. Moving around the castle at night, even if you are not a guard, presents its own challenges. If you need to leave your sleeping area, and perhaps to visit a guardroom, get a drink, or for any other reason, you absolutely need a source of light. Imagine navigating the winding corridors, the uneven stone floors, the steep, irregular staircases, all in complete darkness. It would be incredibly easy to stumble, miss a step and fall, potentially causing serious injury. So you would carry a candle or a small lamp. See how its weak light pushes back the darkness only a few feet, casting enormous shifting shadows that make familiar corners seem strange. Hear the silence ahead of you, broken only by your own footsteps and the sounds of the light you carry. The simple act of walking from one part of the castle to another in the medieval night becomes a deliberate, cautious undertaking, requiring focus and care due to the pervasive darkness and the physical hazards of the structure itself. Higher status individuals might also be awake for parts of the night, perhaps working on correspondence or planning, but even this work is done under challenging conditions. By the weak, flickering light of candles or a small fire, in a room that is likely still cold and drafty, making tasks requiring fine motor skills and concentration more difficult and tiring. The night is not just a time for sleep. It is a time of duty, vigilance, and careful movement within the castle's dark, cold spaces. The garderobe, a necessary discomfort. Among the practical realities of a medieval castle, the system for dealing with human waste is one that highlights the stark differences from modern plumbing, and using it at night presented its own set of discomforts. This was the garderobe. A garderobe was essentially a medieval toilet. It typically consisted of a small chamber, often built into the thickness of an outer wall, with a wooden seat that had a hole in it. This hole led directly downwards through a chute built into the wall, which opened to the outside face of the castle wall, or sometimes into a cesspit, or the moat below. Its function was simply to direct waste away from the interior of the building. The term garderobe literally means wardrobe in French, as the strong smells from the chute were thought to repel fleas and moths, making them also useful for storing clothes. The structure itself was simple: stone or wooden walls, a wooden seat with a hole. There was no flushing mechanism, no water used to carry the waste away immediately as in a modern toilet. Waste simply fell down the chute. The smell associated with the garderobe was often quite strong and unpleasant. From the opening at the bottom of the chute, particularly if it led into a pit or moat, the odour of accumulated waste would rise. Depending on the wind direction and strength, this smell could be quite noticeable, even within the garderobe chamber itself, and sometimes in nearby areas of the castle. Imagine a constant, pervasive smell of sewage. The garderobe chamber, being often built into the cold stone outer wall, and having an opening to the outside through the chute, could be very cold, especially during the colder months. Wind could also blow up the chute, bringing cold air and amplified smells into the chamber. Using the garderobe at night added several layers of inconvenience and discomfort. You would have to leave the relatively warmer area where you were sleeping. You would need to navigate dark corridors, possibly down or upstairs, carrying a flickering candle or lamp to light your way, being careful not to stumble or drop your light source. You would then enter the small, cold chamber and use a system that was inherently smelly and uncomfortable compared to a modern flush toilet. It was a necessary function, of course, but the process of getting there and the experience of using it in the dark, cold and smelly reality of the medieval castle night was far from pleasant. The other dangers of the night, beyond intruders. While the primary purpose of a castle was defense against external enemies, a night spent inside also presented other types of dangers, some less dramatic but equally real. Although the thick walls and guards provided security against direct assault, the sheer endurance required for guard duty meant guards could become fatigued, potentially missing something important. The threat of intrusion or sabotage, while reduced by the castle's defences, was never zero, particularly from skilled climbers or those with inside knowledge. However, other dangers were perhaps more likely. Fire, as we've mentioned, was a constant, significant threat. With open flames from fires, candles and torches used for light and warmth, and a building containing flammable materials like wood and straw, a fire could start accidentally and spread rapidly, particularly in the dark, when it was hard to detect and fight. Escape routes in a castle were designed more for defense than rapid evacuation, making a fire a potentially deadly event. Falling in the dark was another real risk. Uneven floors, winding staircases, unexpected steps, and the deep shadows cast by limited light sources made navigating the castle at night perilous. A stumble could lead to a serious fall and injury, especially if you weren't holding a light or if your light source went out. The castle environment itself posed risks to health. The constant cold and dampness could lead to respiratory illnesses, rheumatism, and other ailments. Poor sanitation and the presence of vermin contributed to the spread of disease. Fleas could carry plague, unsanitary conditions could lead to dysentery. A night spent cold and exposed could easily lead to getting sick. So while the stone walls offered defense against armies inside the castle, at night you faced dangers from firefalls in the darkness, illness due to the environment, and the constant need for vigilance from those on guard. Safety was relative and physical comfort was often sacrificed for security. As dawn approaches, the end of the watch, after the long hours of darkness, battling the cold, enduring the smells and sounds, perhaps trying to find comfortable sleep, the first hint of dawn begins to appear. Outside the castle wall, the sky at the horizon begins to lighten, slowly transitioning from black to deep blue, then grey, then the first pale washes of colour. Inside the castle, this means the absolute darkness begins to soften, revealing the outlines of windows and openings. The sounds of the night watch begin to change. The rhythmic patrolling might become less frequent. As the long shift comes to an end, new guards might arrive to take over. The sounds of the castle waking up slowly begin, perhaps the first purposeful footsteps of servants heading to the kitchens, the distant stirrings of animals in the stables. Smoke might begin to rise more purposefully from chimneys as fires are rekindled for the day. The cold, however, remains. The stone walls are still radiating the chill they accumulated overnight. The air is still likely damp and cool. The light is returning, but warmth is still a luxury that will take time and fuel to achieve. The night with its unique sensory challenges and dangers is passing. The long watch is over, and so, a night inside a medieval castle, far from the romanticized image, a physical reality defined by the enduring presence of cold, damp stone, the pervasive, often overwhelming darkness, the unique symphony of night sounds, wind, stone, animals, guards, and a complex blend of smells, smoke, damp animals, human life. It was a night of seeking warmth in a cold environment, navigating by flickering dangerous light, trying to find comfortable rest amidst hardness insects and vermin, relying on rudimentary sanitation and being constantly aware of the duties of those who kept watch against dangers both outside and within the walls. For a person of today, accustomed to instant light, climate control, hot showers, soft beds and effective sanitation, spending a single night within those thick, cold, dark, smelly walls would be a profound sensory shock, a deep physical discomfort, a powerful reminder of how much the simple realities of comfort and safety have changed. The castle provided security against armies, but the night within its walls was a challenge, all its own. Take a moment now to let the feeling of the cold stone fade. Let the sounds of the castle night recede, and feel the comfort and safety of your own space. As the first light of a very different morning begins to break, we step out from under the heavy stone archways, feel the open air on our faces, and begin a different kind of travel. Our destination tonight, or rather our experience tonight, is on the legendary Silk Road. Not the bustling markets at its ends, but the long, demanding journey itself, through deserts and across steppes, a journey that could take months, a journey that tested the endurance of merchants, guards, and animals alike. The Silk Road conjures images of exotic goods, distant lands, adventure. And it was all of those things, but the reality of traveling it day after day, and crucially, night after night, was one of profound physical challenge, constant vigilance, and a unique sensory experience defined by the vastness of nature. and the close proximity of your fellow travelers. We'll join a caravan, a large group traveling together for safety and companionship as the sun begins to set, and they prepare to make camp for the night. Forget the solid walls of a castle or the confined space of a ship. Here your shelter is minimal, and the night sky stretches boundlessly above you. Let's settle down with them and imagine a night with a Silk Road caravan as the day's travel end, making camp. The signal is given after hours upon hours of walking or riding under the sun. The caravan begins to slow its pace. A suitable spot is chosen for the night's camp, perhaps near a rare water source, or simply on a flat area of sand or steppe grass. Feel the relief in your tired muscles as you finally stop. Hear the sounds of the caravan coming to a halt. The rhythmic pad-pad-pad of camel feet slows and stops. The creak of saddles and burdens being shifted. The tired grunts and groans of the camels as they are made to kneel. Sounds that are distinctive and constant companions on the road. The stamping and snorting of horses. The general low murmur of human voices. Tired, but perhaps relieved to have completed another day's journey. The work isn't over yet. Burdens must be unloaded. Heavy bales of silk, spices, ceramics, precious metals, or other goods. Imagine the weight, the effort, after a long day of travel. Hear the rustle of cloth, the clinking of containers, as cargo is carefully stacked and secured for the night, often arranged to form a protective barrier around the camp. Then tending to the animals. They are vital to the caravan's survival. Imagine the task of watering dozens or hundreds of camels and horses from a limited well or stream, ensuring each gets enough, giving them fodder, perhaps dried grasses or prepared feed carried along. Hear their sounds, chewing, shifting their weight, settling down. Their well-being is paramount. The heart of the camp is the fire. Fuel must be gathered. In many parts of the Silk Road, wood is scarce, so the primary fuel is dried animal dung. Camel dung is commonly used. Imagine the task of collecting this fuel. See the fire being built, the sparks catching hold of the dry material. Hear the crackle and pop as it begins to burn. Feel the warmth it immediately provides against the cooling air. Smell the distinct odor of the smoke, different from wood smoke, a smell that signifies the center of the camp, warmth, and a degree of safety in the vast night. Simple tents might be erected for the leaders or more privileged members. For most, sleeping will be in the open air, perhaps using simple cloth for shelter against the wind. Bedding is laid out, rough blankets, maybe a simple mat. As the last light fades, the sounds of preparation gradually give way to the sounds of a camp settling down. The rhythm of the day is replaced by the different rhythm of the night, one defined by the vastness of the surrounding natural world and the close confines of the human and animal group, the unique smells of the night camp. As the air cools and becomes stiller, the smells of the caravan camp become more pronounced, creating an olfactory environment that is deeply tied to the experience of travel in these regions. One of the most dominant and distinctive smells is that of the animals, particularly the camels. Camels have a strong, musky odor. It's the smell of their thick coats, their sweat, after a long day's travel, and their waste, which is a constant presence in and around the camp. This smell permeates the air, clinging to clothing, to bedding, a pervasive animal presence that is unique to camel caravans. Horses also contribute their smells, the scent of their coats, their sweat, their manure. These animal odors are not confined to the stables of a castle. Here they are simply part of the open-air camp. The campfire, as we mentioned, has its own smell. The smoke from burning dried dung has a specific pungent odor. It's different from wood smoke, perhaps earthier, more acrid. This smell hangs low in the air around the camp, a constant indicator of the fire's presence, a source of warmth, light, and cooking. The preparation of the evening meal contributes simple smells of food, the scent of grains boiling, perhaps dried vegetables rehydrating, the smell of heating salted or dried meat. Basic, functional cooking smells, though often overshadowed by the stronger odors of the animals and the fire. The environment itself adds its scent, the dry, dusty smell of the earth or sand that is everywhere. It gets kicked up by movement, settles on everything, and its dry, mineral smell is a constant background. If you are near a rare bit of vegetation, perhaps an oasis or on the edge of the steppe, you might catch the faint, dry scent of hardy plants. And of course, there is the smell of the people themselves. After days or weeks of travel with very limited water bathing is a luxury impossible for most. The smell of unwashed body sweat and stale clothes is noticeable particularly in the close proximity of the sleeping areas. This is simply a reality of life on a long, arduous journey. These smells, the strong, unique odor of camels, the pungent smoke of the campfire, the dry dust, the basic food, and the smell of unwashed humanity mingle in the open air, creating a distinct and memorable olfactory tapestry for the Silk Road caravan camp at night. It's a world of smells defined by the natural environment, the animals that enable the journey, and the basic realities of human endurance. The sounds of the vast night. As darkness fully settles and the camp quietens, the sounds of the Silk Road night begin to make themselves known. In many ways, the most striking sound is not a sound at all, but the profound silence of the vast open landscape surrounding you. Away from cities, away from settled areas, the natural world at night can be incredibly quiet. The constant mechanical hum of modern life is completely absent. This silence is deep encompassing and can feel both peaceful and slightly unsettling due to its sheer scale. Within this vast quietness, certain sounds become amplified and distinct. The wind, as we mentioned, is almost always present. Hear its sound as it sweeps across the open land, unimpeded by buildings or forests. It can be a soft, sighing sound or a more forceful whistle or moan, sometimes carrying the fine grains of sand or dust that brush against your skin or rustle nearby grasses. The sound of the wind emphasizes the openness and the raw power of the natural environment. From the edges of the wilderness you might hear the sounds of distant wild animals, the mournful howl of a wolf across the steppe, the sharp cry of a desert fox, the hoot of an owl. These sounds carried on the wind remind you that you are in their territory, in a wild place, and that the boundaries of the camp are what separate you from the untamed world outside. Closer to you, the sounds of the camp itself are present but often subdued after the initial settling down. Hear the soft sounds of the animals resting, camels chewing their cud with a rhythmic grinding sound, horses shifting their weight, snorting softly or sighing. These are comforting sounds, the presence of the living creatures vital to your journey. Hear the crackle and pop of the campfire, the spitting of the flames, a constant warm sound that is the acoustic center of the camp. Around the fire, you might hear the low voices of the guards talking quietly, sharing stories, or simply keeping each other company to stay awake. You might hear the soft sounds of your fellow travelers sleeping, gentle breathing, occasional coughs, the rustle of blankets as someone shifts position. In the deep quiet of the open country, sound travels differently. Distant sounds can seem surprisingly close, while nearby sounds might somehow feel absorbed by the vastness. There are no echoes from walls or buildings. Sounds simply dissipate into the immense space. This soundscape of the Silk Road night, the dominant silence broken by the voice of the wind, the distant calls of wild animals, and the contained close sounds of the human and animal camp, creates an atmosphere that is both isolating due to the scale of the surrounding quiet and intimate due to the closeness of life within the small circle of the caravan. It's a soundscape that speaks of vulnerability, vigilance, and the profound presence of the natural world. The bite of the night, cold. One of the most challenging physical realities of spending a night in the desert or on the steppe, despite the heat of the day, is the intense cold that sets in after sunset. These arid environments lack the humidity of more temperate regions, and humidity acts like a blanket holding on to heat. Without it, the heat absorbed during the day radiates rapidly back into the atmosphere once the sun is gone. Imagine feeling the temperature plummet as soon as the sun dips below the horizon. The warmth you enjoyed just moments ago vanishes quickly, replaced by a rapidly cooling air that can become genuinely piercingly cold within an hour or two. The ground, which might have been warm from the sun, quickly becomes cold, drawing heat away from anything touching it. By the middle of the night, the temperature can drop dramatically, even to freezing or below, depending on the season and the specific location. This is a dry cold, but it penetrates deeply. You are exposed to it sleeping outdoors or in thin tents with only blankets for protection. Despite wrapping yourself in multiple layers of clothing and pulling blankets tightly around you, the cold seems to seep in from all sides. The air is cold on your face. The ground beneath you is cold. The wind, even if slight, carries away your body heat. Your muscles might tense against the chill, making it difficult to relax. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, feeling the intense bite of the cold, seeing your breath mist in the faint light. Your fingers and toes might feel numb. You huddle deeper into your blankets, trying to preserve warmth, perhaps shivering. The only real source of warmth is the campfire, but it may be dying down and only provides heat to those very close to it. Getting up to add fuel to the fire or to go to the edge of the camp for any reason means exposing yourself fully to the harsh cold. This intense nighttime cold, a stark contrast to the heat of the day, is a constant physical challenge. It makes comfortable sleep difficult, taxes your body, and requires significant preparation and endurance. It's a reminder that the beauty of the open night sky comes with light under the boundless sky. While the cold is a physical challenge, the light or lack thereof in a Silk Road night camp is a profound visual experience. Away from any source of light pollution, the night sky in these open regions is often breathtakingly clear and dark. The darkness itself feels absolute, a thick, velvety blackness that seems to press in from the edges of the world. But against this darkness, the stars are unbelievably numerous and bright. Imagine looking up and seeing thousands upon thousands of stars stretching across the sky in a brilliant, shimmering tapestry. The Milky Way is often clearly visible as a broad band of light. This is a view of the cosmos that most modern people never experience. It is awe-inspiring, beautiful, and humbling, a reminder of the vast scale of the universe above your small camp. The moon, when it is out, can be incredibly bright in these clear skies, casting sharp shadows and illuminating the landscape to a surprising degree. A full moon can make the surrounding area visible, though still eerie and monochrome. The only man-made light source in the camp is the campfire. Its flames provide a warm, flickering golden light that creates a small circle of illumination. Around the fire faces, our visible objects are clear, and there is a sense of warmth and safety. But this light is very localized. Just beyond the edge of the firelight, the darkness is deep and complete, a sharp contrast that makes the edges of the visible world feel stark and immediate. Moving away from the fire into the darkness, you would rely on the faint light of the stars or moon, or perhaps a small lantern if you have one. Navigating requires care, as the ground is uneven and obstacles are hidden in the shadows. The visual experience of the Silk Road night is one of extremes, the immense, dazzling beauty of the star-filled sky above the comforting but limited circle of firelight in the center of the camp, and the profound, absolute darkness of the vast, empty world that stretches out, seemingly forever, around you. It's a beauty that is inseparable from the vulnerability of being exposed in such a wild, open place. Sustenance for the journey. The food and drink available in the Silk Road caravan camp are determined by the necessities of long-distance travel without refrigeration. The focus is entirely on portability preservation and basic sustenance. Meals are simple and functional. Dried fruits and nuts provide energy. Hard biscuits or flatbreads baked to be hard and long-lasting are staples. Meat is heavily salted or dried into jerky. Grains like millet or barley are carried dry and boiled into simple porridges or stews over the campfire. Imagine the taste, often bland or intensely salty, lacking the freshness and variety of modern diets. Textures are often hard, chewy, or mushy. Preparation is basic, usually just boiling in a communal pot over the fire. Meals are likely eaten quickly sitting on the ground around the fire using simple bowls or sharing from the pot. There's no concept of complex cuisine or leisurely dining. It's simply fuel for the body. But the most precious resource is water. Carrying enough water for dozens or hundreds of people and animals across arid landscapes for weeks or months is a major logistical challenge. Water is stored in leather skins, clay jars, or wooden barrels. It is carefully rationed. Imagine the taste of this water. It takes on the flavor of its container, perhaps smoky from the skins or stale from sitting for a long time. It might be warm or contain bits of sediment. It is not cold, clear, or freely available like water from your tap or a bottle. Rationing is strict. Each person knows exactly how much water they are allotted each day. You drink sparingly, always conscious of the limited supply. The feeling of being constantly slightly thirsty is common. Washing with precious drinking water is unthinkable. Personal hygiene is minimal, limited to perhaps a quick wipe with a damp cloth if absolutely necessary, and water can be spared. The management of water is a constant source of concern for the caravan leaders. Finding reliable water sources along the route is crucial, and their availability dictates the path and pace of travel. The feeling of dependency on this limited, carefully guarded resource is profound. Your life literally depends on the water supply holding out. This simple, monotonous diet and strictly rationed, not always pleasant-tasting water is the fuel that keeps the caravan moving. It is sustenance born of necessity, not pleasure, and its limitations are a constant physical and psychological reality of the journey, the dangers lurking in the darkness. Despite the apparent peace and quiet of a settled camp under the stars, the Silk Road at night was not without its significant dangers. The open landscape, while beautiful, could also conceal threats. The most prominent human danger was bandits and raiders. Caravans carrying valuable goods were attractive targets. Attacks could happen during the day, but dawn or dusk or even the middle of the night offered opportunities for surprise. Imagine the fear of being woken from sleep by shouts, the clash of weapons, the sounds of panic as bandits attack the camp. Relying entirely on the guards and the fighting men within the caravan for protection. The risk of being robbed, injured, captured or killed was very real. Wild animals were also a potential threat, particularly in certain regions. Wolves, jackals or other predators could be drawn by the presence of livestock and people. The campfire and the vigilance of the guards were meant to deter them, but their presence in the distance, their calls carried on the wind, served as a reminder of the wildness of the land. The environment itself posed dangers, Sudden violent sandstorms could erupt in desert regions even at night. Imagine being hit by a wall of wind and sand, reducing visibility to zero, potentially burying tents and supplies, or causing the group to become disoriented. On the steppe, sudden changes in weather, including fierce winds or unexpected drops in temperature, were also risks. Getting separated from the group in the vast, dark, and often featureless landscape was an immediate and potentially fatal danger. If you wandered away from the camp circle at night for any reason, perhaps to relieve yourself, and lost sight of the fire or the sounds of the camp, finding your way back in the darkness was incredibly difficult. Being lost alone in the desert or steppe at night meant almost certain death from exposure, lack of water, or wild animals. Survival in the Silk Road caravan at night depended heavily on the vigilance of the appointed guards and the collective strength and discipline of the entire group. There were no external authorities or safety nets out here. The bond of the caravan was your only protection against the many dangers of the road after dark. Sleep under the open sky. After a long day of travel and the preparation for the night, the body craves rest. But sleep in a Silk Road caravan camp is a different experience from sleeping indoors. Most people sleep outdoors directly on the ground, perhaps sand or hard-packed earth or short grass. This is far from the softness and levelness of a modern mattress. You try to find a relatively flat spot, but inevitably there are bumps or unevenness that make it difficult to get truly comfortable. You sleep fully clothed, often in multiple layers, to combat the cold, wrapped in blankets. The rough texture of the blankets and your clothes against your skin is a constant physical sensation. Sleeping under the open sky while offering the breathtaking view of the stars also brings a feeling of exposure, of vulnerability. There are no walls to protect you, only the small circle of the camp and the distant figures of the guards. You are directly exposed to the wind, the cold, the sounds of the night, and the knowledge of potential dangers outside the camp's perimeter. Sleep is likely not deep or uninterrupted. The cold might wake you, the wind might rustle your blankets, the sounds of the animals or the guards might break through, or perhaps simply the feeling of being exposed in that vast, dark, wild space makes truly relaxed sleep difficult. It is functional sleep necessary to recover for the next day's travel, but it is sleep taken with a heightened awareness of the environment and the inherent vulnerability of your position. It is rest earned through exhaustion taken in conditions that demand resilience. So, a night spent with a Silk Road caravan, a sensory experience defined by the unique smells of animals and campfire, the profound silence broken by wind and distant nature sounds, the intense, penetrating cold under a sky ablaze with stars, a monotonous diet and strictly rationed, often unappetizing water, and the constant underlying awareness of dangers from bandits, animals, and the unforgiving environment itself. It highlights the sheer physical endurance required for long-distance historical travel, the complete dependence on the human and animal group for survival, and the stark contrast between the breathtaking beauty of the natural world and the physical hardships of living fully exposed within it. It's a world far removed from the controlled environments we inhabit today. Take a moment now to let the smells of the camp fade, the feeling of the cold ground and wind recede, and appreciate the enclosed warmth and stillness of your own space. We move now from the exposure of the open plains to the quiet discipline of a medieval monastery. These institutions were havens of learning, centers of spirituality, and crucial custodians of knowledge during the Middle Ages. Within their walls, surrounded by routine and prayer, a vital work was performed, the copying of books, of ancient texts, of religious scriptures. This work often continued long after the sun had set, in a special room, known as the scriptorium. Imagine a space dedicated entirely to the painstaking process of creating books by hand. It was a place of profound silence, of intense focus, and of specific physical challenges that were unique to this environment and this task. Let's step inside one such scriptorium as the evening deepens into night. We will join the monks who have chosen to remain, working by the limited light, experiencing the sounds, the smells, and the quiet dedication of a night spent in the service of knowledge. As evening falls, preparing the scriptorium for the night's work. The day's communal activities in the monastery are drawing to a close. Perhaps the monks have just finished their evening prayers, vespers. A sense of quiet begins to settle over the cloisters and halls. The sounds of daytime chores fade away. For those assigned or choosing to work in the scriptorium through the night, the focus shifts to preparing their workspace. The scriptorium itself is usually a large room, often made of stone, sometimes located near the library or the chapter house. If there is a fireplace in the scriptorium, a rare luxury, the fire is likely tended, embers stoked, or new fuel added. Hear the quiet sounds of wood being placed, the crackle as it catches flame. Feel the limited warmth beginning to radiate into the stone room. Individual workspaces must be prepared. Each monk working on copying or illuminating a manuscript has a designated spot, often a desk or lectern. They gather their materials. Sheets of prepared parchment are carefully laid out. Parchment or vellum is made from treated animal skins, calf, sheep or goat, providing a smooth, durable surface for writing. Ink pots are checked and refilled. Medieval ink, typically made from soot or minerals mixed with a binder like gum arabic, is different from modern ink, thicker, with a distinct smell. Quill pens, usually made from goose or swan feathers, are sharpened and ready. Small sharp knives, often called styluses or scrapers, are placed nearby, essential tools for carefully scraping away mistakes from the parchment surface. And crucially, the light sources are prepared. Candles, likely beeswax for their cleaner burn, though still potentially tallow in poorer monasteries, or oil lamps are brought and placed at each workspace. Hear the quiet sounds of wicks being trimmed, tinder catching fire, the soft hiss as a flame takes hold. See the small flickering points of light appear across the room, pushing back the encroaching shadows. As each monk settles into their place, gathering their robes around them, dipping their quill, preparing to begin the meticulous task, a profound sense of quiet focus descends upon the scriptorium. The air, already still from the monastery's discipline, becomes heavy with concentration. The rhythm of the night's work is about to begin, illuminated only by those small, fragile flames. Temperature and light, the physical realities. The scriptorium, being often a large stone room, shares a fundamental characteristic with the castle: coldness. Stone buildings, while durable, are difficult to heat effectively and retain cold and damp. Even with a fire in the hearth, the warmth is likely confined to a small area, leaving the rest of the room cold, especially during the long hours of a night vigil. Imagine the feeling of the cold stone floor underfoot, even through simple leather shoes or sandals. The air feels cool, perhaps damp, clinging to your skin. Your fingers might feel stiff with cold, making the delicate work of handling a quill and parchment more challenging. Monks would often wear their heavy woolen robes and maybe fingerless gloves to try and combat the chill, but the cold is a constant, pervasive presence. The dampness in the stone walls can also contribute a clammy feeling to the air, making the cold feel even more biting. And then there is the light. This is perhaps the most defining physical challenge of the scriptorium at night. Your world shrinks to the small circle of light provided by the candle or oil lamp at your desk. The light is weak, flickering, and casts unstable shadows. It is barely enough to illuminate the manuscript page you are working on. Imagine trying to read text, or write tiny letters, or draw intricate illustrations under this dim, unreliable light. You have to hunch close to the flame, straining your eyes to see the fine details. The light is not uniform. It flickers with every slight movement of the air, making it hard for your eyes to adjust. Beyond the small pool of light at each desk, the rest of the scriptorium is plunged into deep darkness. The large room stretches out in shadows. The shapes of distant desks, bookshelves, or architectural features are lost in the gloom barely hinted at by the faint light from other workspaces. This creates a sense of isolation, each monk in their small bubble of light surrounded by vast, encompassing shadow. Working intensely under these poor lighting conditions for hours on end takes a severe toll on the body, particularly the eyes. Imagine the constant strain, the squinting, the headaches that would surely result. Over time, this kind of work would lead to chronic eye fatigue, increasing difficulty seeing, and potentially long-term vision problems. It was a physical sacrifice made for the preservation of knowledge. The combination of the pervasive cold and the severe limitations of the light makes the scriptorium a physically demanding environment for the work performed there. The sounds of silence and dedicated work. One of the most striking characteristics of the scriptorium, especially at night, is the profound and deliberate silence. Monasteries followed strict rules, and during work periods, particularly in the scriptorium, silence was paramount. Talking was forbidden except for brief, necessary communication, often done in whispers or sign language. Imagine sitting in this large stone room surrounded by other individuals, yet experiencing almost complete silence. It is a silence that is actively maintained a discipline in itself. This absence of noise is a key part of the atmosphere, fostering concentration and contemplation. Within this cultivated silence, the small sounds that are present become incredibly noticeable, even amplified to your perception. Your senses, deprived of visual input by the darkness, and auditory distraction by the lack of noise, tune into the subtle sounds of the environment and the activity. Hear the soft rustle of rough woolen robes as a monk shifts position on their hard seat or reaches for a tool. Hear the quiet sounds of human presence, the gentle rhythm of breathing, an occasional suppressed cough, a sigh of fatigue, the subtle creak of a joint as someone adjusts their posture. These small human noises are present but subdued part of the quiet rhythm of the room. The most characteristic sounds of the scriptorium are the sounds of the copying process itself. Listen closely and you can hear the quiet, steady sound of the quill pen. The tip of the feather quill sharpened to a fine point moving across the surface of the parchment. It makes a distinct sound, a faint scratch, 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 or a soft hiss, depending on the angle and pressure. This sound is rhythmic, deliberate, the tangible sound of words being transferred from one page to another, one letter at a time. It is the pulse of the scriptorium. Another sound associated with the writing process is the careful scraping away of errors. If a mistake is made, a small sharp knife is used to gently scrape away the ink from the parchment surface. Listen for the faint, delicate scrape, scrape, scrape sound as the blade works against the animal skin, a sound that indicates a moment of correction, a tiny interruption in the flow of writing. You might hear the very soft sound of a quill tip dipping into an ink pot, a faint plink or slurp. The occasional turning of a page in the source manuscript or the page being worked on, a soft rustle of the stiff parchment. If there is a fire in the hearth, its sound is also present but often subdued in the large room. The quiet crackle and pop of burning wood a comforting warm sound against the prevailing cold and silence. Outside sounds are likely greatly muffled by the thick stone walls of the monastery, reinforcing the sense of being in a quiet, enclosed world, separate from the external noise. The soundscape of the scriptorium at night is one of profound quiet, where silence is the dominant presence broken only by the subtle, focused sounds of human activity. The breath, the rustle of robes, and most distinctively, the quiet rhythmic sounds of the quill scratching and the knife scraping on parchment. It is a soundscape that speaks of disciplined concentration and the slow, painstaking work being performed in the heart of the night. The unique smells of the scriptorium. The scriptorium also possesses a unique collection of smells distinct from the wood smoke and animal odors of a castle or caravan. These are the smells associated with the materials used and the environment itself. Perhaps the most defining smell is that of parchment or vellum. This material, made from treated animal skins calf sheep-goat, has a very specific organic odor. It can be described as slightly leathery, animalistic, or even faintly cheesy or goaty, particularly in a damp environment. Imagine the smell rising from stacks of prepared skins or from the page open on your desk. It's the smell of the material itself, the base for all the words and images being created. This smell fills the air of the scriptorium, especially when many manuscripts are present. Adding to the scent of parchment is the smell of the ink. Medieval ink, depending on its composition, has a different smell than modern ink. Iron gall ink, common later in the period, can have a slightly metallic or acidic smell. Carbon inks made from soot and gum might have a faint, smoky or earthy smell. Inks made from mineral pigments would carry the subtle scent of those minerals. Imagine dipping your quill into the ink pot and catching the distinct odor of the dark liquid. This smell is localized around the workspace but contributes to the overall aroma of the room. The light sources also add their scent. As in the castle, beeswax candles have a cleaner, faintly sweet smell when burning. Tallow candles or oil lamps produce a heavier, greasier, sometimes acrid smell of burning fat or oil, which can be quite noticeable and unpleasant in the relatively still air. The smell of smoke from the hearth fire is also present, adding a familiar layer of burning wood. The stone room itself contributes its own smell, the earthy, musty odor of cold and damp stone. This smell is pervasive, a constant background scent that combines with the other aromas. Inks used for illumination, adding color, would also have their smells. Pigments ground from minerals or plants mixed with binders, adding subtle, earthy or chemical notes, depending on the color being used. These smells, the organic scent of parchment, the specific odor of the ink, the smell of burning wax or oil, the background of smoke and damp stone, combine to create an atmosphere unique to the scriptorium. It is the smell of dedicated work of ancient materials and of the slow, painstaking creation of books. It is a smell associated with knowledge labor and the physical reality of producing written works by hand. The work itself, a meticulous physicality. The core activity of the scriptorium is copying and performing this work at night, under limited light, and in cold conditions is a physically demanding task despite its quiet nature. Imagine sitting for hours on end, often in a hunched position, to be closer to the weak light source, illuminating your page. The work is incredibly meticulous, requiring intense concentration. You are copying text from a source manuscript letter by letter, word by word, sentence by sentence, onto the fresh sheet of parchment. The process of writing with a quill requires skill and control. You must hold the feather pen at the correct angle, apply the right pressure to the parchment surface, and regulate the flow of ink. Each letter must be formed carefully and consistently. Imagine the strain on your hand and wrist from maintaining this precise control for hours. Accuracy is paramount. Any error copied from the original manuscript or any mistake made while copying could introduce inaccuracies that would be perpetuated in future copies. Monks were trained to be extremely careful, but mistakes happened. Correcting errors is a delicate process. If a mistake is made, you cannot simply erase it like with a pencil. You must use a small sharp knife to carefully scrape away the layer of ink from the parchment surface. This requires a very light touch and precision to avoid damaging the parchment itself, which would create a weak spot or even a hole. Imagine the concentration required to perform this delicate scraping under flickering candlelight. For illuminated manuscripts, the work is even more detailed. Adding decorative initial letters, intricate borders, or miniature illustrations requires artistic skill and even finer precision. Pigments must be mixed and applied with tiny brushes. This work is beautiful but incredibly time-consuming and hard on the eyes, especially in dim light. The physical toll of this work is significant. Sitting or standing at a high desk in the same position for long periods leads to stiffness and pain in the back, neck, and shoulders. The constant fine motor control required for writing and scraping causes hand and wrist strain. And as we mentioned, the most severe physical consequence is the strain on the eyes from working in poor, flickering light, leading to fatigue, headaches, and long-term vision problems. Your body becomes stiff, cold, and tired, even as your mind is focused on the intellectual task of copying words. The desk and seating. Simple functionality. The physical setup of the workspace in a scriptorium reflects the function of the room, practicality over comfort. Each monk typically had a simple wooden desk or lectern. Some were designed for sitting with a slanted surface to hold the manuscript. Others were high, allowing the monk to stand while working, which could help with circulation and prevent some stiffness, but was also tiring. These desks were often plain, sturdy wooden structures built for utility, not ergonomics. There were no adjustable heights, padded surfaces, or wrist rests like you might find in a modern office. Seating was equally basic. Monks sat on simple wooden stools or benches. These offered no back support, no cushioning. Imagine sitting on a hard wooden surface for hours on end, feeling discomfort set in. The design of the desk and seat often required a hunched posture to bring your eyes closer to the manuscript, especially under the poor light. You would lean forward, bending over the text, which put significant strain on your back and neck over long periods. The hard seat adds to the discomfort, making it difficult to remain focused solely on the work without being distracted by physical aches and pains. This basic, uncomfortable workstation is where hours of meticulous, physically demanding work were performed. It was a setup designed to support the task of copying, not the comfort or long-term well-being of the copyist. Seeking rest. A simple dormitory. After many hours spent in the quiet, cold scriptorium, perhaps working until the early hours of the morning, the time comes to seek a few hours of rest. You leave your desk, blow out your candle, and quietly make your way to the monastic dormitory. The dormitory is usually a large, unheated stone room where all the monks sleep together. It is likely as cold, if not colder, than the scriptorium, especially as the night progresses towards dawn. The air is cold and still. Your bed is simple and Spartan, typically a wooden frame with a thin mattress stuffed with straw or flop. It is hard and not particularly comfortable. You have rough woolen blankets for cover. The beds are often arranged in rows close together, perhaps with low partitions between them, to offer minimal separation, but no real privacy. Imagine the sounds of many men sleeping in the same large room, breathing, occasional coughing, shifting, perhaps snoring. The room is dark and cold. You wrap yourself in your blankets, feeling the roughness of the wool. Despite the blankets, the cold from the stone floor and walls seems to penetrate. Sleep is likely functional and necessary, but not luxurious or deeply comfortable. It is simply a period of rest in a basic, cold, communal environment preparing you for the duties of the day ahead. The dangers of the scriptorium night. While perhaps not facing the immediate threat of bandits or plague working in the scriptorium at night presented its own specific dangers. The most significant was the risk of fire. Open flames from candles and oil lamps were used extensively in a room filled with highly flammable materials, dry parchment paper if available, and sometimes wood in the furniture or structure. A dropped candle, a spark, a lamp knocked over in the dim light could easily ignite a manuscript, or even the room itself, leading to the destruction of irreplaceable texts and posing a severe threat to life. Health risks were also present. The combination of sitting for long periods in a cold, damp environment could lead to illness, particularly respiratory problems. The sedentary nature of the work, contrasted with the physically demanding life elsewhere in the monastery, also presented challenges. As we've discussed, chronic eye strain from working in poor, flickering light was a very real long-term danger, potentially leading to permanent vision impairment. It was a physical cost of the dedication to copying. And finally, there was the constant risk of damaging the valuable manuscripts or the precious parchment with a slip of the hand, spilling ink, tearing a page, making an irreparable mistake with the scraping knife. While not a physical danger to the monk, it was a significant threat to the knowledge being preserved. So, a night spent in a medieval monastery scriptorium, a profound contrast to the external world, defined by deep silence, broken only by the sounds of dedicated work, illuminated by fragile flickering light, filled with the unique smells of parchment ink and damp stone, performed in a cold, often uncomfortable environment, requiring immense concentration and physical endurance. It was a life of discipline and intellectual pursuit, but one that came with significant physical hardships, eye strain, bodily aches, cold, and the constant risk of fire, all for the sake of preserving written knowledge in an age before the printing press. It highlights the quiet, painstaking labor that formed the backbone of historical scholarship. Take a moment now to let the sounds of the quill fade, the smell of parchment recede, and appreciate the silence and comfort of your own space, far from the cold stone and flickering candlelight. We move forward in time once more, perhaps to the 19th century, the height of the Victorian era in London. Imagine the city above, a place of bustling commerce, grand architecture, technological innovation, and strict social codes. But like many rapidly growing industrial cities, London faced a massive challenge beneath its seemingly civilized surface, dealing with the waste of millions of people and countless industries. The solution, developed and expanded throughout the 19th century, was a vast, complex network of sewers beneath the streets. This system, a marvel of engineering for its time, was essential for public health, removing filth that previously collected in open cesspits and rivers. But for the people who worked within this system, or for those few who dared to enter it, it was a world of incredible hardship, danger, and sensory overload in the worst possible ways. Tonight, we will take a deep breath and descend into the hidden world of the Victorian London sewers, a place of perpetual darkness, overwhelming smells, and constant peril, a side of Victorian life that most people never saw or wanted to see. Let's imagine spending just a short time within that dark labyrinth, descending into the underbelly. The first sensory assault. Our entry point might be a manhole cover, simply opening a section of the busy street above, revealing a dark opening below, or perhaps a less conspicuous entrance along the River Thames. Imagine the sound of the city above, traffic voices, industry, a distant roar that is about to be replaced by something else entirely. As the cover is lifted or the entrance opened, the very first thing that hits you is the smell. An immediate, incredibly powerful and complex stench that rises up from the depths. It is unlike anything you have experienced on the surface. It takes your breath away, omits or threatens to. Lowering yourself down, using a ladder or steps, you feel the rough, cold, damp texture of the brickwork or stone. The air grows heavier, thicker as you descend. The sounds of the world above become rapidly muffled, fading away. Then, the cover is closed above you. Hear the heavy thud as it seals the opening. Suddenly, you are plunged into profound darkness. The light from the surface is gone. You are now completely reliant on the lamp or torch you carry. The air around you now is defined by that overwhelming smell and a chilling dampness. The sounds of the city are replaced by the immediate, intimate sounds of the sewer itself. You have left the familiar world behind and entered a dark, smelly, and potentially very dangerous labyrinth beneath the feet of London, the space below ground, brick damp and flowing waste. Once you are fully within the sewer system, you begin to perceive the physical space around you, illuminated only by the small pool of light from your lamp. You are in a tunnel, typically constructed from sturdy brickwork. The tunnels vary greatly in size. Some might be small conduits requiring you to stoop low or even crawl on hands and knees through flowing waste. Others, particularly the main interceptor sewers built later in the Victorian period by engineers like Joseph Bazalgette, are surprisingly grand, vast arched tunnels tall and wide enough to stand and walk upright within, sometimes even side by side with another person. Regardless of size, the defining characteristics are consistent brickwork dampness and flowing water. The walls are constructed of rounded bricks, often coated with a layer of slime or grit. They are perpetually damp, seeping moisture from the earth above and the water flowing within. The air is humid and cold, and at the bottom of the tunnel, the invert, is the sewage, a stream or river of wastewater flowing constantly. This is the combined waste from homes, factories, and streets above. Human waste, animal waste, industrial discharge, rainwater, runoff, garbage. The level varies, sometimes just a trickle, sometimes several feet deep, forcing you to wade through the foul liquid. Imagine the feeling of that environment, the rough texture of the brick walls, cold and slimy to the touch, the chilling dampness of the air soaking into your clothes, the disconcerting feeling of sewage water flowing around your feet or legs, the sense of being enclosed underground, surrounded by layers of brick and earth with the weight of the city above you. It's a space that feels entirely alien, removed from the natural world, the overwhelming and dangerous smells. Of all the sensory experiences in the Victorian sewers, the smell is perhaps the most intense, the most pervasive, and the most challenging to describe adequately to a modern person. It is not just an unpleasant odor, it is an environment defined by stench. It is an overwhelming mixture of everything that flows down from the city. The heavy, sickening smell of raw human and animal waste is the most obvious component, but layered upon that are countless other odors: the smell of decaying organic matter, food scraps, animal carcasses, general garbage, the acrid smell of industrial chemicals and byproducts discharged from factories and workshops, the smell of stagnant water and mildew. And then there are the smells of the gases produced by decomposition in this enclosed space. The distinct foul odor of hydrogen sulfide, often described as smelling like rotten eggs, is a clear indicator of a potentially dangerous gas. Methane, Another gas present is odorless itself, but its presence is part of the overall volatile atmosphere. Imagine breathing air thick with this complex, sickening mixture of odors. It can be nauseating, causing you to feel dizzy or lightheaded. It burns the back of your throat and stings your eyes. The smell clings to your clothes, your hair, your skin, permeating everything you bring into the sewer and take out. There is no escape from it within the tunnels. It is constant and absolute. Your modern nose and stomach, accustomed to effective sanitation and fresh air, would likely react violently to this perpetual concentrated stench. It is perhaps the most immediate reason why a person today would struggle immensely to spend time in this environment, the sounds of the underground flow. In the darkness and behind the overwhelming smell, the sounds of the sewer create their own unique acoustic environment. The most constant sound is the movement of the water, the sewage flow itself. It can be a low gurgle in smaller pipes, a steady rush in larger ones, or a loud, powerful roar if there's a significant amount of water flowing, such as after heavy rain above ground. This sound is always there, a reminder of the purpose of the tunnels and the unseen movement of waste. The other significant sounds come from the inhabitants of this underground world, the rats. Hear their quiet, scurrying sounds along the brickwork ledges or within the water. Hear their squeaks, their chittering calls. They are numerous, and their sounds are a constant reminder of their presence around you in the darkness. Your own sounds are amplified and distorted by the enclosed space. Hear the splashing of your feet as you walk or wade through the sewage water. Hear your own breathing, which might be heavy due to the poor air quality. Your voice, if you are speaking to others or simply making a sound, will echo in the brick tunnels, the sound bouncing off the walls, making it difficult to judge distances or the source of other noises. Sounds from the world above are heavily muffled by the layers of earth and brick. You might hear a very faint rumble of traffic, the distant sound of heavy weights being moved, or perhaps the muffled clang of manhole covers being replaced far away. These sounds are remote, distorted like faint echoes from a different world, emphasizing your separation from the surface. The soundscape of the Victorian sewer is dominated by the rush of flowing water and the sounds of rats layered with the echoes of your own movements, all enclosed and separated from the sounds of the city above. It is a soundscape that feels both active, the water, the rats, and eerily detached from the world of the living above ground, light against absolute darkness. Unlike the patchy darkness of a medieval castle or the starlit sky of a caravan camp, the darkness in the Victorian sewers is absolute, profound, and constant. There is no natural light whatsoever except for perhaps a tiny, distant glimmer from an open manhole or a ventilation shaft high above, openings that themselves might be dark or covered by gratings. Your only illumination comes from the light source you carry. Imagine holding a simple oil lamp or a gas lamp. Early versions might be used in some areas. Its light is weak, flickering, often dirty from the environment. It casts only a small pool of yellow or orange light directly around you, pushing back the darkness just a few feet. Beyond that small circle of light, the darkness is complete. It is a thick, velvety blackness that seems to absorb the light, stretching out endlessly in every direction. You cannot see the walls, the floor, or anything beyond the immediate vicinity unless you shine your light directly upon it. This absolute darkness creates a sense of confinement and disorientation. Without a map and experience, it would be incredibly easy to get lost in the maze of tunnels. Your small light feels fragile against the vastness of the gloom, constantly reminding you of how little you can see and how much is hidden in the dark around you. The shapes and details of the brickwork appear and disappear as your light moves, creating a visually unstable and unnerving environment. Working or moving in this environment requires constantly holding or positioning your light source, casting moving shadows that can play tricks on your eyes and add to the feeling of unease in the complete darkness. The many dangers beneath the city. Beyond the discomfort of the smell, damp and darkness, working or exploring in the Victorian sewers involved facing multiple, severe and often hidden dangers. One of the most immediate threats was the presence of toxic gases. Hydrogen sulfide produced by decomposition could accumulate in poorly ventilated areas. Inhaling it could quickly cause dizziness, nausea, loss of consciousness, and even death. Methane, another gas, while not directly toxic in the same way, was highly flammable. An open flame from a lamp or torch, or even a spark from hitting metal on stone, could ignite accumulated methane, causing a devastating explosion in the confined tunnels. Sewer workers were often warned about this risk, but safety measures were rudimentary. Perhaps the most feared danger was sudden flooding. A heavy rain shower on the surface or a sudden influx of industrial discharge could send a massive surge of water roaring through the sewer system with little or no warning. A small stream could instantly become a powerful, deadly torrent, sweeping away anyone caught in its path, trapping them or drowning them. Imagine hearing the sudden roar of rising water in the darkness behind you and having only moments to scramble to higher ground, hoping you know the way. Physical hazards were also present. The brickwork, particularly in older sections, could be unstable or prone to collapse. Slippery surfaces and uneven footing in the dark increased the risk of falls and injury. Debris carried by the sewage could create obstacles. Animals, particularly rats, posed a danger of bites, which could transmit serious diseases. And of course, direct contact with the raw sewage itself exposed workers to a high risk of contracting waterborne illnesses like cholera, typhoid, and dysentery, diseases that were often rampant on the surface and even more concentrated below ground. These dangers, poisonous gases, explosion risks, sudden floods, physical hazards, animal bites, and disease were not theoretical. Sewer workers faced these risks constantly, often with minimal training or safety equipment. Every trip down was a gamble with their health and their life, the essential unseen work. Despite the extreme conditions and dangers, essential work was performed within the Victorian sewers. Sewer workers were responsible for inspecting the system, carrying out repairs to the brickwork, and crucially clearing blockages. Blockages could occur when large objects or accumulated waste restricted the flow of sewage. Clearing these blockages was often the dirtiest and most dangerous task. It required wading through deep sewage, sometimes crawling into narrow pipes using shovels, poles, or even bare hands to break up the obstruction and restore flow. Imagine performing this physically demanding, deeply unpleasant work in the darkness, surrounded by overwhelming smells and the risk of gas or flood. This was essential work for the health of the city, above preventing sewage from backing up into homes and streets. But it was performed by people often at the very bottom of the social ladder, in conditions that most citizens of Victorian London never wanted to contemplate. The work was often solitary or carried out in small groups, adding to the sense of isolation in this hidden world. It was a testament to the human capacity for enduring extreme discomfort and danger for the sake of a meagre living. So, spending time in the Victorian London sewers is a sensory experience defined by absolute darkness, an overwhelming, sickening and dangerous stench, the constant sound of flowing waste and scurrying animals, and a pervasive feeling of damp, cold confinement. It's a world of constant severe dangers, from invisible toxic gases and explosive methane to sudden deadly floods and the risk of disease from direct contact with raw sewage. It highlights the hidden cost of urban development and the harsh reality faced by those who performed the essential but deeply unpleasant and dangerous work necessary to make the city function. It is a stark contrast to the regulated, relatively clean environment we inhabit today. Take a moment now to let the smell of the sewers fade completely, let the sounds of flowing water and rats recede, and feel the clean air and the comfortable, safe surface beneath you. A stark contrast to the dark, dangerous labyrinth below. And so, our exploration of historical nights and challenging environments concludes for this evening. We have travelled far, in time and space, leaving behind the familiar comforts of our modern world, to imagine lives lived very differently. We spent time within the cold, echoing stone walls of a medieval castle, experiencing the pervasive darkness, the chilling dampness, the unique sounds and smells of a fortified structure after sunset. We then journeyed under the boundless star-filled sky with a Silk Road caravan, feeling the vastness, the intense cold of the open night, and the particular sounds and smells of life on the road. From the open plains we sought refuge in the quiet discipline of a medieval monastery scriptorium, focusing on the painstaking work performed in cold, dim light surrounded by the unique smells of old parchment and ink, the silence broken only by the sounds of focused labor. And finally, we descended into the hidden dark underbelly of Victorian London, navigating the overwhelming smells and inherent dangers of the vast sewer system beneath the city streets. Each of these experiences offered a unique perspective on the hardships of the past, especially when the light faded or the environment itself was extreme. The pervasive cold and physical limitations of stone and darkness in the castle, the raw exposure to the elements and the vulnerability in the vastness of the Silk Road night, the quiet internal physical strain and the limitations of light in the scriptorium, the intense sensory assault and multiple immediate dangers of the hidden underground world. They were different kinds of challenges, different kinds of discomfort, but all far removed from the ease we often take for granted. Thinking about these realities, the lack of reliable light, the difficulty in controlling temperature, the constant presence of challenging smells and sounds, the limited sanitation, the physical dangers inherent in daily life or specific tasks. It highlights just how significantly our world has changed. The layers of comfort, safety, and convenience that surround you right now are the result of centuries of slow, often difficult progress. The ability to simply turn on a light, adjust the temperature, access clean running water, use modern sanitation, sleep in a warm, dry, pest-free bed, navigate safely through your environment at any hour. These are extraordinary luxuries from a historical perspective. Remembering these historical hardships isn't meant to create anxiety, but perhaps to foster a quiet sense of gratitude for the relative ease and safety of the present moment, and to appreciate the incredible resilience, the sheer endurance of the people who lived through those times, who built and maintained these structures, who undertook those journeys, who performed those tasks under conditions that we can now only imagine from a place of comfort. Now, as the sounds and smells and physical sensations of those historical places begin to fade, letting the medieval castle, the Silk Road camp, the scriptorium, and the Victorian sewers recede into the distance, allow your mind to return fully to your own peaceful space. Feel the support beneath you. Feel the warmth or the coolness of the air around you. Feel the quiet comfort of your own surroundings. There are no cold stone walls pressing in, no vast empty darkness surrounding you, no overwhelming smells, no sounds but those you choose to hear, or the simple, steady rhythm of your own breathing. Let any lingering thoughts about our journey simply dissolve into the quiet of the night. There is nothing left to do now but allow yourself to fully relax. Release any tension you might still be holding. Allow your body to sink deeper, heavier, into your bed or chair. Focus on the feeling of ease, of safety, of comfort. You are here now, safe and warm and ready for rest. Thank you for joining me on this exploration tonight. I hope it has been peacefully informative and that you feel ready now to simply drift. Allow yourself to settle. Let your breathing deepen and slow. Drift now towards a peaceful sleep. Good night.